Hey guys, Josiah here with Aesthetyx Fitness. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about running a Spartan Beast. Alright, so just this last Saturday, I ran the Chicago Spartan Beast race, which is a 12 to 13 mile long race with 30 plus obstacles through a terrain park. And I wanted to share with you guys a little bit of my experience with that race, also a little bit of my training that I did in preparation for that race, and what I plan to do differently and add to my training before I run the Michigan Spartan Super next weekend. That way you guys are getting some functional training information and a little window into my personal experiences with functional training, because this channel is not just meant to be purely an aesthetics or looks-based channel when it comes to your fitness journey. I also want to help you guys train functionally and build functional strength and endurance and fitness. But before I get any further into today's video, make sure to click that little subscribe button down below and click that bell icon right next to it. That way every time I come up with a new video, you guys are getting notified and not missing out on any new content. Also, if you feel like it really helps me out, if you'd be willing to click that little like button down below as well. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. Alright, so first I'm going to give you a quick rundown of basically what specific training I did in preparation for this race, in addition to my usual 4 times a week lifting schedule, which is slightly more aesthetics or bodybuilding oriented. In addition to my normal lifting, I also did a lot of functional movements, things like farmer's carries and tire flips at the large gym that I go to, where I actually have access to big tractor tires to flip, as frequently that is an obstacle that actually appears in Spartan races. I also did exercises like dead hangs from rock climbing holds, lots of pull-ups, and an attempt to do a pull-up, release one hand, grip, pull up, release the other hand, grip, to help me with things like monkey bars and using unilateral arm strength. And in addition to that, I also did a lot of motions involving just pure grip and trap strength, things like farmer's carries and similar motions. Because in Spartan races and most obstacle races, you're going to almost entirely be encountering grip strength and pulling related exercises. You'll be, pulling ropes or climbing ropes or hanging onto monkey bars or picking up stones. You never really encounter pushing motion, so I wanted to make sure that in the months leading up to this race, I was really training my grip strength and pulling motions, my back and bicep and shoulder strength, to ensure that I had a really strong foundation there so I wasn't failing any obstacles on the race. Because in case you didn't know, in a Spartan race, if you fail an obstacle, you have to do 30 burpees, which is basically where you jump up, touch the sky, hit the ground, do a push-up, and repeat 30 times, and that gets really tiring, especially when you're running 12.5 miles. And in addition to these strength training exercises, I also really wanted to improve my cardiovascular ability, because I myself am not a particularly adept person when it comes to cardio, when it comes to long distance running. I'm good at sprinting short distances, running really fast, and doing like heavy lifting exercises with a lot of intensity, but I'm not great at keeping up a steady state activity for a very long period of time like I was going to need to be on this race. So I practiced running longer distances, moving from, 1.5 miles, 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, running a 5-mile race a few weeks ago just in kind of preparation to get my body ready to run longer distances. And another very important thing I would integrate into my training is mixed training, which is where I'd run a half mile and then do like 4 sets of pull-ups to exhaustion, run another half mile, do like 4 sets of farmer's carries, sprint a 1/4 mile, and then do, 4 sets of deadlifts, and doing my training that way so that I'm actually simulating the running a distance, doing an exercise, or running a distance, completing an obstacle. And then about every 3rd or 4th exercise I would just drop and do like 15 burpees afterwards to simulate kind of failing an obstacle, just in case that were to happen on the race, so that my cardiovascular ability would keep up with that and my stamina would be able to endure if I did have to suddenly do burpees and then run a long distance. Alright, so that's it for my training. Now onto my actual race experience. It was a ton of fun. I have done several different Spartan races in the past, but this is the first Beast I've ever done. It's the longest Spartan race I did, about 12.7 miles, just under 13. And it was like 60 degrees outside, which is great, but it was pouring rain the entire time, which was not great. And it was in a terrain off-road park for like ATVs and SUVs. So basically all of the trails that we're running on are made of like mud, sand, and rocks. So the rocks were all slippery, the mud was deep, and you would suddenly like be running along a mud slick path and then just drop into like a 3-foot deep puddle, because it looked like it was just a couple inches deep, but in fact it was just a huge pit there. And I'm not complaining about that. That was actually part of the fun of the experience, was just, getting down in the mud and scrabbling over wet rocks, running through rivers and up sand dunes and things like that. Tons of fun. However, there was an element of it that I was not prepared for and I had not prepared for in my training, and that was just the amount of hills. It was like they were trying to kill us with hills, especially in the second half of the race. About 4 or 5 times every mile, there'd be about a 30-foot, 60-degree incline, climbing up like a bunch of rocks on a small hill, and then just straight back down 60 degrees the other side. So while you may laterally only be covering 12 to 13 miles, you are adding a lot of verticality into that, which made the race a lot more challenging than it otherwise would have been. And I myself, from the time the race started, was actually having an easier time of things than I thought I was going to. Again, I'm not a distance person, so I was anticipating kind of begrudging the entire experience. However, until about mile 9.5, I was having a really good time and thought it was all going quite smoothly. And then smack dab we hit 9 miles and I start cramping horribly in my quads. Like every time a hill comes up, my legs just completely stiffen up and I just couldn't move. I was like tottering along like an old man. It was not fun for about the last 3 miles of the race. And luckily I had some people who donated their Gatorade juice to me, the little Cliff blocks with the salt and electrolytes. And I had brought some of those myself and stopped halfway through the race at a little aid station to grab some because they had one set up by the side of the trail. But I guess I just didn't have enough, or I wasn't staying hydrated, or didn't have enough carbohydrates or something, because I was just cramping. My body was not able to process that lactic acid fast enough to get me to keep moving. So it was really an issue of trying to stretch out my legs. I kind of stopped for a couple seconds, just stretched, let my legs relax for a minute, and then kind of tried to just slowly move through it, start with walking and then move to jogging. And eventually I was able to overcome it, but as you can see here, even by the time I reached the end of the race, I was nursing some pretty bad cramps, and it was not fun at all. But I will say, other than the dreaded spear throw, which has an 82% burpee rate if I recall correctly, I did not fail a single obstacle on the entire race out of the 30 obstacles that were there, which of course felt very good and meant that I did a bare minimum number of burpees, which is always a good thing. And I finished the race in a grand total of 4 hours and 31 minutes, which, while not a great time, is something that I was proud of because I really wanted to make sure I did it in well under 5 hours, and I did, especially given the fact that this is the first time that I've ever run a race of this distance. So I was happy with that time, but there are some things I would like to do differently before I run my Spartan Super next week. And those things are training with hills and inclines a little more, so doing more hill sprints in order to get my body used to running up and down inclines, because that's something that I didn't exactly train a lot of in preparation for this race. And also I want to bring more exogenous sources of electrolytes to the races, because I think having that extra little electrolyte boost, especially towards the tail end of the race, is really going to help prevent me from cramping up and really boost my performance and help me to finish in an even shorter time. And given that this next upcoming race is a super and will be a little bit shorter, it's going to be 8 to 10 miles as opposed to 12 plus, I more so want to train my actual running speeds, like decreasing my 1 mile time, rather than working on running endurance. And by doing this, I hope to increase the speed with which I'm able to get from one obstacle to the next, significantly shortening my overall race time. So with that being said, that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you found it entertaining and enjoyable. If you liked the video, leave a like down below, and remember to comment on this video letting me know your thoughts, and if you've ever run a Spartan race, how'd you do? In fact, if you ran the Chicago Spartan Beast, let me know your time down below and we can compare. And of course, click that subscribe button so that you are always getting notified every time I come out with new videos, so that I can help you guys train smarter and look better.